My parents blew the money they'd saved for my wedding on throwing a huge celebration for my twin sister, and that was the last straw for me. I cut ties with them completely. But now they've come crawling back, asking for help, and I feel like I've got to tell the whole story. I've been stuck in this weird competition with my twin sister Gemma for as long as I can remember. It wasn't just the usual sibling stuff either, it felt like my parents had a hand in stirring it up, even if they didn't realize it. From the beginning I was just there. Gemma was always treated like she was extraordinary. The reason? She was born exactly 15 minutes before me. Yeah, just 15 minutes. That tiny difference somehow made her the golden child in their eyes. Gemma was the miracle baby, the one they put on a pedestal right from birth. I wasn't a troublemaker or anything, but anytime I did something well, she was the one who got noticed for it. My first memory of this favoritism goes all the way back to kindergarten. We were both in the school play. I had the lead role as Little Princess, and Gemma had a couple lines as a flower. She forgot her part, cried on stage, and my parents missed my whole performance just trying to comfort her. Later that night, no one said a word about how I did. All they could talk about was how brave Gemma was for even getting up there. That kind of thing kept happening all through elementary school. If she bombed a test, they'd tell her, "Sweetheart, you gave it your best," but when I aced mine, it barely got a nod. I remember in 6th grade, I spent weeks on a science fair project about renewable energy. I did research, built models, even talked to local environmental experts. When I proudly showed them my blue ribbon for winning first place, they barely looked at it because Gemma had a rough volleyball practice that day and needed to vent. That was the point where I just stopped sharing my wins with them. What really hurt was how open they were about it, like they weren't even trying to hide the favoritism. At family events, my dad used to joke about how Gemma was the firstborn, and even though we were twins, those 15 minutes somehow made her more mature. He'd go on about how Gemma was the dependable one, always looking after her little sister, while I just stood there, being quietly erased. By the time I hit middle school, it was starting to take a toll. I got obsessed with trying to prove I was just as good, maybe even better. I joined every club I could think of: student council, debate team, math club. I stayed up late every night trying to excel. Meanwhile, Gemma kind of drifted through school. She didn't do much, but somehow she was still the one everyone talked about. One moment I'll never forget was in 8th grade when I got picked to represent our school in a statewide math competition. I spent months preparing, sometimes staying up till 2 or 3 in the morning. That same day, Gemma had a casual soccer game. Not only did our parents skip my event, they didn't even ask how it went. When I brought home the trophy for 2nd place, all they could say was how crushed Gemma was that her team lost. High school didn't get any better, it just raised the stakes. I overloaded my schedule with AP classes, nailed every assignment, and kept a perfect 4.0 GPA. Gemma? She was more into parties and barely scraped by with C's. Still, she was the fun one, and I got labeled as too intense or overly competitive. It all hit a boiling point our senior year. I was named valedictorian, got a full scholarship to a top university, and even had a write-up in the local paper. Gemma barely graduated and ended up at community college. But during our graduation celebration, which was supposed to be for both of us, my parents spent the entire time feeling sorry for Gemma because she didn't get into her first choice school. They didn't even mention my achievements in their speech. The real turning point happened while I was in college. I kept up my perfect GPA, held down a part-time job, and was working my way through a top-tier university majoring in computer science. Every time I came home for a break, I carried this quiet hope that maybe things would be different, that maybe my parents would finally acknowledge what I was doing. But it was always the same. Everything was about Gemma. Even when she dropped out of community college after just 1 semester, they somehow spun it into this narrative about how bold she was for forging her own path. Then came Thanksgiving during my junior year, and that's when things really shifted. My uncle, who was always a little too friendly with the bottle, let something slip during dinner. He was reminiscing about my mom's pregnancy and casually revealed that my parents hadn't actually planned on having twins. They only wanted 1 baby, and when they found out it was 2, they were crushed. My dad, who tends to just go along with things, apparently shrugged it off with, "We'll make it work," while my mom was overwhelmed trying to figure out how they'd manage. And their solution? Pick a favorite and invest all their love and energy into her. Of course, that chosen one was Gemma, the firstborn, the miracle child, their pride and joy. Those 15 minutes made all the difference to them. Hearing that finally made everything click. I suddenly understood why it never seemed like they cared about what I did. I was the bonus baby, the one who came along by accident. That realization flipped a switch in me. I stopped trying to win their approval. Instead, I decided to pour everything into building a life for myself. I threw myself into my studies and internships, not for recognition, but for my own future. By the time I graduated, I had several job offers from well-known tech companies. I accepted a position as a software engineer at a rising startup, and within few years, I was promoted to senior developer. Meanwhile, Gemma was busy planning an over-the-top wedding after a short fling with some rich guy she met at a bar. Naturally, my parents were over the moon. They couldn't even remember the name of the company I worked for, but they had no problem spending hours on the phone helping her plan her big day. The funny part? My company was on track to go public, and my stock options alone were worth more than her fiancé earned in a year. But they never once asked me how my career was going. What really broke me, though, was the wedding fund. The only person who'd ever treated us equally was our grandmother. Before she passed, she made sure to leave each of us a generous amount of money specifically for our future weddings. She was crystal clear about it being split evenly. In private, she had even told me she knew how unfairly my parents treated me, and that this was her way of making sure I had something of my own. But of course, my parents couldn't respect that. Gemma wanted a flashy wedding with a celebrity photographer, a designer dress, and multiple venues. Instead of telling her to scale back or asking her wealthy fiancé to contribute more, they dipped into my portion of the inheritance to cover the costs. They didn't ask. They didn't tell me. I didn't find out until months later when that same uncle, after a few too many drinks at another family gathering, brought it up. When I finally confronted them, they got defensive. My mom just waved it off and said, "Oh, sweetheart, we were going to tell you eventually. We'll pay you back when we can." And my dad? He doubled down, saying, "Well, Gemma needed it more. She's the one getting married the traditional way, and you're always so focused on your work. We figured you wouldn't want a big wedding anyway." I stood there in their kitchen, looking at these two people who were supposed to be my parents, and I felt nothing. No sadness. No anger. Just this hollow, cold detachment. They truly didn't understand why what they did was wrong. To them, it made perfect sense. If it was for Gemma, then it had to be okay. That night, back in my apartment, I did a lot of thinking. I realized that every major milestone in my life, every victory, every proud achievement, had either been overshadowed by Gemma or flat out ignored. Even when I graduated high school, they barely noticed because they were too busy comforting her over her grades. Because Gemma struggled at community college, my full-ride scholarship barely got a mention. When I earned my first promotion, she was too wrapped up in wedding planning to even acknowledge it. That was the moment I did what I should have done a long time ago. I opened my laptop and wrote them an email. I told them straight, "I know what you did with the wedding fund. I know you took my share of the inheritance without even asking and spent it on Gemma's big day. But honestly, it wasn't even about the money. It was about how they treated me my entire life." I told them it was clear I was never the daughter they wanted. I said I was done chasing their love or approval, and I was finished being the child they never planned for. I asked them not to contact me again, unless it was to repay what they owed. Then I hit send, blocked their numbers, and deleted them from all my social media. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I was racing to keep up with Gemma or waiting around for recognition that was never coming. This past year has been completely transformative. I poured myself into my career and focused on growing as a person. After our company's IPO, my stock options ended up being worth even more than Gemma's entire wedding. I started therapy to work through all the baggage from growing up like that. I bought my own home in a great part of the city. And I've made friendships that are real, built with people who value me for exactly who I am. Every now and then, Gemma tries to reach out through extended family or mutual friends. She leaves messages like, "Family should stay together," or "You'll always be my sister." But where was that family loyalty when she stood by while our parents dismissed every single one of my achievements? Where was it when she gladly accepted my inheritance for her wedding? Whether she admits it or not, she was part of the whole thing. Some relatives have tried to guilt-trip me, saying I'm being too harsh or that family is everything. But these are the same folks who silently watched my parents play favorites for years. They never stepped in. They had nothing to say then, so I don't need their opinions now. Funny thing is, walking away helped me figure out who my real family actually is. My therapist, who reminds me none of this was ever my fault. My coworkers, who celebrate my wins. My best friend from college, who helped me move into my new place. These people, they're the ones who really care. Now my company's opening a new branch in another state, and they offered me a team lead position. For the first time, I'm making a big decision without wondering how Gemma would react or if my parents would be proud. It feels incredible to live my life for myself. I do wonder sometimes, am I being too cold for cutting them off like that? But whenever I think about going back, I remember all those years I spent feeling like I'd never be enough. And then I know I did the right thing. That said, things have just gotten more complicated. Few weeks ago, everything turned upside down. I was in the middle of a team meeting when my phone started blowing up with calls from my uncle. At first I ignored it. Family drama usually means trouble. But when the calls kept coming one after the other, something felt off. So I finally picked up. It was Uncle Elliot, and I could hear right away that something wasn't right. His voice was shaky, unusual for him, since he's usually the kind of guy who laughs through a storm. He said, "Hey, it's Elliot. I need to talk to you about your parents." My stomach dropped. I hadn't spoken to them in 2 years, and I just knew this wasn't going to be good. I tried to keep my voice steady as I asked, "What's going on?" He hesitated, then said, "There was an accident. A bad one. They're in the hospital." He took a deep breath. Apparently, their car was hit by a truck that ran a red light. My dad's in critical condition. My mom's got multiple broken bones. They've been hospitalized for several days. Days? I repeated, raising my voice. "No one thought to tell me until now?" He replied more gently this time, "They asked me to call you. I think they want to see you." But that wasn't all. He added, "There's an issue with their insurance." Uncle Elliot told me that 5 months earlier, my parents had let their health insurance lapse. They were drowning in credit card debt and had made some bad investment choices which left them struggling financially. Now stuck in the hospital with no discharge in sight, the medical bills were piling up fast. I asked about Gemma, though I already knew the answer. Elliot sighed and explained that she'd shown up once after the accident, said she couldn't help, and left it at that. She didn't want to ask her husband for money so soon after their honeymoon, whatever that meant. She was focused on her new family, her stepkids, her own little world. I couldn't help but laugh. That was classic Gemma. Always a reason, always a way out. She didn't think twice about taking my inheritance for her wedding, but now she was too proud to ask her rich husband to help pay for our parents' medical bills. After I hung up, I just sat at my office window, looking out over the city skyline. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was now in a position to help them. My stock options had matured, and I'd saved more than enough to cover their expenses. But did I want to? That question haunted me for days. Every time my phone buzzed, I jumped, half expecting an update on their condition. I kept imagining them lying in those hospital beds, maybe wondering if I'd show up. And yeah, I felt guilty even considering turning my back. They were still my parents, after all. But I couldn't ignore everything that came flooding back. The years of being overlooked, the money they stole, and how they only seemed to remember I existed when they needed something. This wasn't about making things right. It was about a check. 3 days after that call, I got a text from Gemma. "I heard you're doing well. Mom and Dad really need help. This is your chance to do the right thing." My chance to do the right thing? I wanted to scream. Where was her conscience when she took my inheritance and turned a blind eye to how I was treated all those years? She had no problem watching our parents ignore my every success. And now suddenly I was the one who needed to be morally responsible? A week of silence went by before I finally heard from my parents themselves. My mom was groggy, probably medicated, but she still had that same manipulative tone I'd heard my whole life. She started like nothing had happened. "Sweetheart, we're in a difficult spot. The doctors say the bills could reach $230,000, not even counting rehab. We know we've made mistakes, buddy." I cut her off. "No, you don't. You never have. You haven't spoken to me in 2 years, and now you call because you need something." Then my dad jumped in. Sounded like he was on speaker. "That's not fair. We're your parents. Family looks out for family." That line, "family helps family," lit a fire in me. Years of resentment came rushing to the surface. "Oh really?" I shot back. "Where was that idea when you used my inheritance to fund Gemma's wedding? When you skipped my college graduation? When you dismissed every single milestone in my life because you were too busy doting on Gemma?" There was a pause, and then I heard my mom crying. The same guilt-ridden tears she always used when she wanted to pull me back in. She whimpered, "How can you be so heartless? We're in the hospital. Your dad might need surgery. Are you really going to abandon us now?" I took a deep breath. And I finally said what I'd been holding in for years. "Yes. Yes, I am. You abandoned me emotionally a long time ago. You made me feel like I was just Gemma's shadow, your backup plan. And now that she won't help, you come to me like I'm your second choice. I won't do it. I'm done being your fallback. My dad tried again, but we're family, eh? No, I interrupted. We're not. Not anymore. The moment you decided only Gemma was worthy of love, that was the end of it. I ended the call. Blocked their numbers again. Then I sent Gemma one final message, they're your parents too. Figure it out. The days that followed weren't easy. Not at all. There were still moments when doubt would creep in. Had I gone too far? Was I being too harsh? Should I just step in and help them, regardless of the past? But every time I started leaning that way, I remembered how they treated me all those years, how the only time I ever heard from them was when they needed something. Then yesterday, Uncle Elliot called again. He tried pulling at my sympathy by telling me my parents' conditions were getting worse. He said they both needed surgeries and physical therapy, and there was talk of them possibly losing their home. They were even considering a second mortgage just to cover medical bills. But here's the thing, none of this is my responsibility. These are the consequences of their own choices. They were the ones who favored Gemma, the ones who blew through the money that should have been mine. They let their insurance lapse. And now they were left to deal with the fallout. People might say I'm being cold. Maybe I am. But I've spent my whole life trying to earn their love, trying to prove I was enough. And I'm done. I'm not the backup plan anymore. If Gemma won't step up, I'm not going to keep being the one who has to fix everything. This time, I'm choosing myself, even if that makes me seem heartless. My peace of mind matters more than their manipulations. My financial future matters more than their lack of planning. I once asked myself if I was the jerk for cutting them off. Now I need to ask, am I the jerk for refusing to pay their medical bills? Even my therapist doesn't have a clear answer. I still feel guilty, but at the same time, I can't help but feel like this is just another chapter in the same story where I'm only good enough when they need something. And the story doesn't stop here. In fact, things just took another wild turn. Few days ago, my life flipped again. I was winding down after a long, stressful workday. We just finished prepping for the grand opening of our new office. I was at home, reading over some final project notes, sipping a glass of expensive red wine, a little luxury I now allow myself, and letting some classical music play softly in the background. Then at exactly 7:30 p.m., my doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. I hadn't ordered anything. My friends always text before dropping by. I hesitated and peeked through the peephole, and there she was. Gemma, standing at my front door, dressed to perfection like the high society wife she'd become. She was wearing a designer dress, flawless makeup, and casually holding a $12,000 Hermes Birkin bag like it was no big deal. That bag alone could have put a real dent in our parents' hospital bills. I actually considered pretending I wasn't home. But the person I've become over the last few weeks isn't the same woman who used to tiptoe around her. Gemma used to make me feel small, and I let her for too long. Not anymore. I opened the door with the calm, controlled energy I bring to boardroom meetings. Leaning slightly against the frame, I said, well, if it isn't my lovely sister, to what do I owe the honor? She didn't wait for an invite. Typical Gemma. She just brushed past me and walked right into my apartment like she owned the place. Her eyes moved around, taking in the original artwork, the sleek modern furniture, the floor-to-ceiling windows showing off the city skyline. I could almost see her making mental notes, probably comparing it to her giant suburban home. Nice place, she said, voice tight with fake politeness. Very cozy. That loaded tone rich people use when they mean the opposite. I didn't waste time. Why are you really here, Gemma? She adjusted her scarf, a nervous tic she's had since we were kids. Mom and Dad are getting worse, she said. Mom's physical therapy isn't covered under their current plan, and Dad's dealing with internal bleeding they missed initially. He needs emergency surgery. The hospital's demanding proof of payment or they'll pause treatment. They're even considering selling the house. I watched her grip that pricey bag a little tighter. Classic Gemma, dressed in luxury, showing up with panic in her voice because it finally mattered to her. I waited. And this is my problem, why? I raised an eyebrow and let the sarcasm land. Her polished exterior started to crack. Because you can help, she said. I know your company went public. I had already looked into the stock prices. I did my homework. I knew I had the money. That made me laugh, a sharp, unexpected sound that echoed off the walls. So you've been tracking my finances? I said, the sarcasm slipping through. Interesting. Did you put this much effort into research before you helped yourself to my inheritance for your wedding? Or before you told them you couldn't help? What about your rich husband? Where's he in all this? Gemma's cheeks turned bright red. I recognized that shade immediately. It always came right before one of her childhood meltdowns. Back then, she'd cry and Mom and Dad would rush to make it all better. "This is different," she muttered, her confidence starting to unravel. "I have a new family now. I've got responsibilities. Stepkids. Tom and I keep our finances separate. I can't just throw money around every time family issues come up." "Can't throw money around?" I cut her off, my voice suddenly firm. "You mean you can't help the very people who gave you everything? The ones who paid for your wedding using my inheritance? The ones who skipped my college graduation because you needed help moving into your apartment? Those parents." She waved it off, like she always did. "That's ancient history." But I saw her physically step back. She knew this wasn't about the past anymore. This was about now. "You're being selfish," she added, clearly frustrated. And that word, selfish, that was it. That's when something clicked in me. All the years of bitterness and buried anger sharpened into one crystal clear thought. I walked over to my office in silence, grabbed my laptop and a few documents, then came back into the room. "You want to talk about money, Gemma?" I asked. "Let's talk." I turned the screen so she could see it. My investment dashboard, live and real. Take a good look. These are my stock options. Let me break it down in a way even you can understand. This is worth more than your husband will be in 3 years. That house you're so proud of? I could buy it in cash tomorrow and not blink. Her face went pale, the red drained out as she stared at the numbers. I kept going, laid out my investment records, recent pay stubs, and offers I'd gotten from top-tier competitors. "But you work in tech," she stammered, finally stumbling on her words. "You're just a programmer." "I'm a senior development director now," I said, calm and clear. "While you were busy playing house with your rich husband, I was building something on my own. And I didn't have to step on anyone to get there, unlike you." I clicked my laptop shut with purpose. "You're right, I could pay for their treatment. And I wouldn't even miss the money. But I'm not going to." She whispered, "You're being cruel." But I could tell she knew the truth. Her little sister had surpassed her, and she couldn't hide from it anymore. "No," I said, "cruel is ignoring someone your whole life. Cruel is stealing their inheritance without a word. Cruel is only showing up when you're in trouble." I walked to the front door and pulled it open. "Are we done here?" I asked. "Don't come back." She stood there clutching that luxury purse like it could protect her from what had just happened. "One last try, you'll regret this," she said, but her voice didn't have its usual bite. "When they lose everything," I told her, "my only regret will be not cutting ties sooner. Goodbye, Gemma." After she left, I poured myself another glass of wine, an expensive bottle I'd been saving for a special moment. Turns out this counted. Then I stepped out onto the balcony. The city lights stretched out in front of me, a glowing map of independence and promise. For the first time in my life, I felt completely free. No more living in Gemma's shadow. No more shame. No more chasing approval I was never going to get. And the next morning, my phone was blowing up with notifications. Turns out, Gemma had spent the whole night dialing up every relative she could, telling them how I'd changed, how money had made me cold and heartless, and that I was abandoning the family when they needed me most. Uncle Elliot even sent me a long-winded email, all about karma and family duty. So I responded by dropping a detailed folder into the family group chat. Inside were scanned copies of my inheritance documents, bank records showing exactly how my money ended up funding Gemma's wedding, text messages from Gemma where she flat out refused to help with the hospital bills, even with her luxury lifestyle. And a clear breakdown of my current net worth, just to show that yes, I could help, if I wanted to. And just like that, the group chat went dead quiet. Only one person replied, our cousin Anna. She wrote, "Holy crap, you actually did it, didn't you? You really made it on your own." Over the next few days, I focused on the future. I accepted that promotion out of state. It came with a major pay bump and a better stock package. My realtor said my apartment would probably sell for more than what I was asking, so I listed it. I've already started hunting for places in my new city, might even go for a penthouse this time. Then last night, Gemma sent one final message, "Mom cries every night because of you." I replied she had years to cry about how she treated me, and attached a screenshot of the inheritance paperwork again. Her tears don't work anymore. After that, I blocked her and every other family contact. It felt like closing a chapter one should have ended a long time ago. Someone messaged me recently and asked if financial success was worth losing my family. But the truth is, I didn't lose anyone. I walked away from people who never treated me like family in the first place. Success didn't change me, it just gave me the strength to stop accepting their treatment. Next week, I'm flying out to house hunt. New job, new home, new chapter. And for the first time in my life, I'm stepping into the future with zero guilt hanging over me. A jerk? Maybe to some. But I've realized something important. When toxic people start calling you selfish or cruel, it usually means you finally stop letting them walk all over you. Thanks for tuning in. If you haven't subscribed yet, be sure to click that button and turn on notifications for more unbelievable real-life stories happening all around you.